This week we are testing the Orea Brewer. Welcome, my name is Patrick Rolfe and this is Coffee with April. For this video, we are testing out a new little gadget that was a bit randomly sent to us. So we didn't buy it, we didn't necessarily ask for it, but we're happy to receive it. So a lot of you have seen this already. It's the new Orea Brewer, I think coming out of the UK, if I've done my research correctly. Yeah, we basically got this sent to us with a little bit of a letter from the founder, asking us to kind of test it, and we thought, why not? Let's test it, right? So what we want to do here is just kind of an introduction video to it. This is like, we did a few test brews. This is how we use it. This is our first kind of opinions on it. And then what we would like to do is do some more comparison videos and stuff like that, right? Now, we should say for this video that he specifically asked us to use Kalita filters. So we do. And we only do that because he actually sent that in the package. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have. But that's something that he recommended. We respect that and we're going to use it. Now, there's a few kind of initial observations before we jump into the brewing. And looking at the brewer, especially looking at the shape of the paper filter inside of the brewer, we end up in a category of flatbed brewers very similar to what Fellow is doing, for example, right? And that's also what we've been seeing when we're test brewing with it. So whenever you design a brewer, something that we took a lot into consideration is just your general average flow rate. So the pace of your flow rate throughout the brew from start to finish. And when you create a brewer like this, that is almost kind of flat walls, not really, right? But if you look at the structure of the paper filter inside, you have a very, very small angle basically. And what that is gonna do is it's gonna force through a lot of the water in the early part of the brew and then go very, very slow in the later part of the brew, which is something that, for example, using the Kalita filter is not gonna necessarily help. One, because they're a bit inconsistent, and two, because they have a notorious kind of slow second half of the brew, right? So that's something that we keep in mind, and that's something that we've been also experiencing when we're test brewing. Basically, we have very fast initial drawdown and then very slow drawdown in the end, which is leaving us with a cup that doesn't necessarily have the harmony or the structure that we are looking for, right? But we have a little bit of a recipe we're gonna share it with you, and this is kind of our favorite version of it so far. So we're brewing a washed, processed Pacamara coffee from the El Socorro farm in Guatemala, one of our favorite coffees at the moment. We're gonna dose that 12 grams. And we're gonna do a traditional 200 gram pour in total. However, when we're working with the April brewer, we usually do a 2-pour structure. We usually pour a lot of water in the first pour, and there's a reason for that. It's because we want to saturate all of the coffee evenly from the get-go. So if you have 12 grams of coffee and you pour, let's say, 20, 30, 40 grams of water, you're just not gonna saturate all that coffee evenly at the same time consistently over multiple brews. However, we can't do a 100 gram pour in here because basically the water would just go through too fast because of the shape of the brewer, right? So we switched up our pouring a little bit, but we're gonna walk you through it. The water temperature sits at 91 degrees Celsius, which is the same that we would use for this coffee on the April brewer. Now, we are gonna start with a 50 gram pour, starting in a circle, just making sure that it's as wet as possible. And then we're just gonna let it sit here, right? Now, as with all filters basically, or all brewers, regardless if they're cone shape or flatbed, basically the higher the water level, the faster the flow rate. That's just how it is, right? That's how a brewer works, more or less. And that's part of the challenge with doing so narrow, kind of low angle walls as well, because it will be very easy for the water to fill up. Now we let this sit for 40 seconds, and then I'm gonna pour another 50 grams. Another observation is, which is very similar to the Fellow, is because of the paper filter, what happens is that we have these kind of let's call them gap, for example, in the filter, where we have a lot of other coffee particles kind of gathering. And because of this structure, we're gonna have a very hard time, again, saturating all of that coffee evenly, right? So it's a little bit of a frustration. We're going up to 120. And here we're actually gonna pour the remaining amount of water up to 200, just in a center pour. And the reason for why we're filling it up now is that we know that this brewer will be very slow in the end. So we need to make sure that we have enough water to get all of that water through evenly, right? So we're gonna give this a little bit of time to draw down, and do some tasting, do some trials, and then get back to you guys with the final results. So we're back with a summary of the Orea Brewer. So basically what we have here is, which is quite interesting because we're using the same grind size, same dose, basic recipe as we do with the April Brewer, right? So we're gonna do a little bit of a comparison, even though a proper comparison video will come in the future. Now, if we use this grind size and a similar pouring structure with the April Brewer, our brew time is gonna be about 1 minute faster than what this brewer generates, right? And what we see here is basically what we referenced before, is that you have a very fast flow rate initially, and we had the majority of all the water go through the brewer at about 210, but then it took about 1 minute more for a very small amount of water to go through the rest, right? So we didn't have a completion until just about 3 minutes, basically, right? What we get out in terms of TDS here is 1.35, which makes sense. It's a little bit higher than what we usually do, but that comes with that longer contact time on the same grind size. Now, another observation, which we already mentioned, is that we do have quite a lot of coffee stuck up on the walls in between these kind of gaps in the paper filter, which is not perfect, right? Overall, what we have here is a brewer that clearly can make a fine cup of coffee. It tastes fine, right? What we do lack is a little bit of structure and harmony in the cup, right? Which is kind of the next level thing that we talk about when we compete in coffee and so on, right? So it's basically how all of the different taste attributes just fits together, right? I sincerely believe that with another paper filter, it will taste a lot better. We know from previously that a lot of this kind of slowdown in the later part of the brew is a Kalita thing. And a big part of that is actually not based on shape of brewers. It's based on the paper filter itself, right? So we're gonna come back with more videos with this. We're gonna try the April filter inside of it, see what happens. And we're gonna do some proper direct comparison with the April Brewer as well and talk a little bit more about it. We know a lot of you have this brewer. We know there's a lot of people talking about it. So please share your thoughts and your ideas on it. We're gonna, as always, take this conversation over to Patreon and do a little bit more of an in-depth version of it. Personally, I also know they have a few different versions of the brewer in terms of materials. You know, what do you think about that? Is there one material that you think is better than the other ones? And with that, we wanna thank you for Orea to sending us this brewer. We're probably gonna just do the favor of sending it forward to someone else. So if you're a Patreon member, you're probably gonna get this, at least one of you is gonna get this within the near future. So with that, we wanna thank you all for watching and have a good day. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.